take away your sorrow.
Hi guys, I'm back. Oh my gosh. So I was waiting for them to tell me when to pull into the garage so I could get my car inspected. And I had a conference call at 2. I got everybody on board on the conference call, and they're telling me I have to bring my car in. And I couldn't, first the call was in my car, so you could like hear voices in my car. So I'm trying to like give them my insurance card and my registration and all this stuff. And these guys are just looking at me like, oh my God. And then, so then I got out of the car, and of course I have an up-to-date insurance card electronically on my phone, but I'm in the middle of a call and I couldn't show them the numbers. So I'm like, just wait until I'm done with this call. And then the people on the other end are like, we can't hear you. Can you talk up? Oh my gosh. It was really a hot mess. And so then I had to get them on speaker because I was out of my car and I disconnected it from the car phone, but then I couldn't disconnect from my speaker. So I'm like in this garage and it's like high ceilings and you can hear their voices. Oops. So, but it went well. All in all, I just didn't do a lot of talking. I never do anyway. I wanted to come on here because I'm really excited to share some things with you. I told you that I was the curator at Meadowcroft Museum for a really long time, and one of my real passions that I absolutely love is analyzing textiles. My nerdism is coming out, but I just love to look at the colors. I love to look at the fabric choices. I like to try to figure out, what era, what time period was this fabric produced? Was it woven? Was it printed? What kind of printing styles were used in certain time periods? And this is what I did for so long. And I just, as much as I did it, I wanted to do it more. I loved it. I was even volunteering at other museums so I could just look and learn and just kind of envelop all of this beauty and all of this creativity and skill that has just been passed down from one generation to another. And so I wanted to share some of the tools that I used whenever I was doing my fabric analysis. And they're really pretty basic tools. They're really pretty simple. This is let's see if you can see it. It's a microscope. Let me move back here. This is just a really cheap, it costs $10. It's a $10 microscope, and this is probably 20 some years old, and I got this from Radio Shack. And I don't even know if Radio Shack is still in existence anymore. But it has a, here's the turn off and on button. It takes two AA batteries, and I don't know if you can see the little light. No, well, maybe. And then this is the magnification. It just moves this little head up and down so you can get closer or far away if you need to and get it into focus. So what you can do is a lot of people say, oh, well, I need to find out through a burn test whether or not this fiber is wool or whatever. No, no, no. All you need is one of these, something $10. Don't risk putting a match to anything to, figure out what kind of fiber it is. So I found, you certainly can't see through here, although I do have slides that represent what wool looks like under a microscope, what silk looks like under a microscope, what, let's see, wool, silk, flax, and what a man-made fabric or fiber looks like under a microscope. And I'm going to insert a picture of what all of these look like so you can get a good idea. So wool looks like fish scales under a microscope. So it looks like a long tube that has little fish scales on it. Cotton looks like translucent twisted ribbon. Flax looks like bamboo, and silk just looks like translucent tubes. And then any kind of man-made fibers underneath a microscope, it looks like they just came out of a pasta machine. They're perfect. Any of the natural fibers, they do have imperfections, and you can see thickness and thinness of the different fiber strands. So those are the differences between all the different fibers that you can examine just by using something like this. And this is what I used when I worked at the museum and whenever I was analyzing textiles. Now, the things that I looked at, even though Meadowcroft was a prehistoric site, most of the things that I was examining were either late 18th century or 19th century materials. So it could be, we looked at shoes, and along with that, we did preservation as well. So in my up-and-coming videos, what I would really like to do is to share with all of you some really inexpensive ways to take care of the things that you make, take care of the things that you have saved from your family members in a way that is not going to cost you an arm and a leg, and it's going to provide you a safe environment for those textiles. So I'd like to have the opportunity to share some of the pieces that I have with you and some ways that I store them and some things that I do on a regular basis to keep them safe and to keep the fabric and the threads from deteriorating anymore. There are certain dyes in certain cotton fabrics, certain quilts that will actually eat and destroy. There's absolutely nothing that you can do with certain dyes in some of our older quilts and our older coverlets and older fabrics. It just disintegrates. So you might look at an old quilt that's, maybe over 100 years old or more, and you'll just see that certain fabrics have just been completely, it almost looks like they're eaten away, but it hasn't been that anything has destroyed it. It's just that the dye just ate that cotton up, and that's what happened to it. So I'm going to insert a little picture that's going to show what all the different fibers look like under a microscope, and I'll do that right now. Okay, the first one here is cotton. And you can see cotton looks like twisted ribbon. Linen or flax, see it has the little nodules like bamboo. And silk just looks like a translucent tube. Wool, you can see it looks like fish scales. And rayon, which is made from wood, that kind of looks like it came out of a pasta machine. The same with the acetate. Nylon, which is derived from coal. That again, very straight,
Acrylic is made from petroleum. Polyester is also petroleum. So these are the man-made fibers, and they all look like they were just pressed out of a pasta machine, whereas the natural fibers have very distinct, unique characteristics.
And then I'd like to share with you a piece that I have. I really, really cherish this a lot. This is a coverlet, a blanket, and it smells so good. And this is all wool. So if we just kind of take a look at this piece, and if we look at it from the standpoint that we're going to examine this, one of the things that, and I know I've mentioned this a lot, but it really is near and dear to my heart, is the idea that I do love the object, and I do love examining the piece. But what is really fascinating to me is who made this piece, and what does this piece tell about the maker, about their color choices, about the materials that they had on hand, where they lived, who they were making this for. So it's the people, it's the makers that I'm really, really fascinated with. And so when I look at different historical pieces, or any kind of piece that someone, if someone says, hey, I have a quilt that my great-grandmother made, would you take a look at it? I want to know about your great-grandmother. Do you know how old she was when she was quilting? How old was she, when she passed away? Did she pass down any of her skills to any other family members? Any photographs of her quilting or weaving, or just all these things are things that are so, so important to me when I'm analyzing a textile. So I did, like I said, I did mostly 18th and 19th century pieces, but I did spend some time at the Carnegie Museum working in their archaeology department, looking at pottery shards. And what we would look at, we would examine the piece, and many times they would have pressed cloth into the clay as a means of tempering. So you could look at that cloth, and was it, it was mostly netting, or maybe it was a woven, fragment of something. But maybe on some wild example, you might be able to tell. First of all, you could tell whether it was S-spun or Z-spun. And is there a way to determine? I don't know if, to my knowledge, I don't know if any archaeologists in this area have uncovered this, but did certain regions spin S and certain regions spin Z to make their cloth, or to make their rope, or to make their netting? So, if you're spinning in one direction, you get a twist that looks like an S, so the slant is this way. And if you spin in another direction, in the opposite direction, the twist is this way. So that's why they say the twist is either S or Z. And so if you're spinning a single in S, when you ply two S singles together, if you spun it again in S, it would really make it even more tighter and highly twisted. So you would have to go the opposite way if you were plying, so you'd ply Z. So that way it kind of relaxes some of that twist. So, see, I get so excited about all this. So anyway, if we were going to look at this, okay, this is a coverlet, and I'm going to sit here. I can show you how long it is. Okay, so I'll put it on the floor and take some pictures so you can get a full view. But first of all, if we just want to look at this and we want to say, okay, this is definitely a woven piece, and let's see. So you can see that this is a twill, okay, and the changing of the threads gives it a different appearance, but if you follow that, it's still a twill going straight up. It looks different. You have to really your eye just has to really take a minute and focus on that. So this is a twill, whether it was woven on a 4 or 8 harness loom, I don't know that. And we can see that here is the seaming. So the loom, and I will insert pictures here, the loom, without measuring that, maybe I'm gonna take a guess and say either 36 or 40 inches wide. Okay, that's just a guess without measuring. Here is the seaming that they did. So they wove 2 separate panels at a particular length, and then they seamed them together. Now, in the Appalachian regions, they would say that they would take all these apart. If they were going to wash this coverlet, they would take all the seams apart, and they would wash these 2 pieces separately. And when they seamed them back together again, they never wanted anything to be absolutely perfect, because they believed that only God was perfect. So they would purposely just seam them kind of randomly and not have them match. Now that isn't true for every single coverlet that I looked at. There's been many where they've been flawlessly seamed together. But this one just looks like they just took some cotton thread and didn't even do a neat stitch. You can see it. They didn't care if you saw it. Okay. So the other interesting thing about this is the hem, and this is a rolled hem, and they did take pretty good care to make sure those stitches were evenly spaced, and it looks like they're using just a beige cotton, an off-white cotton thread, and that's on both sides. So let's take a look at where they seamed it. Okay, so even where they seamed it, right in here, they turned everything over and seamed it up. So at this point, we know that this is a twill. It could be woven on a 4 or an 8 harness loom. So this is 100% wool, and it is also hand spun. And it looks looks like. They doubled the threads on the end, and this is a 2-ply hand spun. Whoever wove this was pretty good about keeping their edges nice and neat, and it looked like they doubled the edges right here, which is very common when you're weaving. This is a little bit of worn areas here. And that could just be wear and tear. They may have used a temple. That's happened to me. That's why I'm looking at that. That's happened to me where I've used a temple, which it's a piece of wood that has metal tines on the end of it, and you stretch it out and put it on as close to the edge of your fabric as you're weaving it as possible, and it just keeps your ends from drawing in. So when I look at that, that just reminds me of when I've used a temple and I've broken threads, but it's probably just wear and tear. That's my speculation. You can't do that. No. So we know it's all wool. And we can also look at the color choices that they used, and this is definitely, it's blue, it could be indigo, it could be woad, and this definitely could be madder root are the dyes that they used. So at this point, we know that whoever was weaving this on a multi-harness loom. It's a twill pattern. We know roughly the potential width. It could be wider. I have a 19th century loom that's 54 inches wide. So this could have been, 45 inches. It could have been, depending on how wide this is, I'm going to guess and say it's 40, but it could be 36. So we've established that. We've established that they weren't really caring that much about maintaining a neatness with joining, but they certainly cared about their edges. And they certainly cared about this edging, and we know that it's hand spun. And I know that this came from Wales. And I have family members that are from Wales, although this is not a piece that came from my family. I purchased this online. So this is as much as I can tell you about this particular blanket or coverlet. And just holding it and looking at it gives me a connection with the people that preserved this, the people that kept this in their family. And coverlets and things that were woven and quilts, they were all really special to family members. And this is very well preserved and very, very well cared for and very well done. So this is just one example of, a textile when you really sit down and you look at them and you have no clue, you have no idea, you don't know where it came from. You have to look at the workmanship. You have to look at the detail. Were they just using scraps of fabric that they had on hand, or were they purchasing the finest of fabrics to make a beautiful quilt? So what I would like to offer is the opportunity for all of us. I'm kind of inching close to almost 1,000 subscribers. And one of the things that I've been asked by a few of the people that are watching my podcast and my vlog is, can you tell us about the history of this and about the history of that? And I feel like everybody kind of has their contribution in the podcast world, and, some people are better at certain things. And this is a skill that I have had over the last, been fortunate enough to learn from the best of the best, and just have a real passion for looking at pieces and uncovering stories about the piece and bringing to light certain little details that other people may not have noticed before. So what I would like to do is open up a hashtag on Instagram, and we could call it hashtag textile treasures, and have as many people who would like put a photograph or two and a little blurb about where their treasured textile comes from. And it could be anything from something that you made a few years back to your grandmother or great-grandmother had this for, you've had this in your family for years and years and years. So I will put the link below, and if you're not on Instagram, I will include my Meadowsweetfarms Yahoo account down below, so that way, if you're not on Instagram, I can put your photograph in Instagram for you. So, I will be putting that hashtag up, and I hope that everyone has the opportunity to find something that they've been treasuring, and to be able to have a place to share the talent of the past, the stories of the makers from the past, and for all of us to have the opportunity to really examine some of these pieces. And whenever I worked at Meadowcroft Museum, one of the things that we did in our region was we would have every 6 to 8 months, we would have people come from anywhere, different areas, maybe it could be from the southwest of Pennsylvania or the Pittsburgh area, so it would be, a local area such as Meadowcroft where we would all gather, or maybe we'd go into downtown Pittsburgh or the northern end of Pittsburgh or the eastern part of Pittsburgh, and we would take photographs of coverlets that people would bring, neighbors and friends and people would bring from all over. And we would document those pieces. What was the fabric like? What stories can you tell us? And we've collected this incredible catalog of pieces that are really unique and really unusual. Well, I'm kind of thinking on, of course, a bigger scale. And I'm thinking maybe, it could be a textile tool. It could be your great-grandmother's quilting frame, or this beautiful sock darner that came from Scandinavia or somewhere, and it's got all these beautiful carvings in it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be textiles, because of course we all know that the tools are just equally as important as the textile. But the most important thing is the connection with the people that made these things, and what can we learn from them? What unusual skills and unusual things that are maybe somehow being buried, that this is an opportunity, especially with the social media that we have and the way that we can all connect on such a large scale, So whether it's you live in the United States, or you live in Canada, or you live in Europe, or wherever you live, it would just be so incredibly interesting to see all the different types of textiles and all the different places all over the world gathered together under this one little umbrella of textile treasures, and just to see all these beautiful things. I hope everyone joins in. I really hope that this catches on. If you could pass the word along, and I'm going to try to get in touch with some other podcasters I know, and hopefully we can get some people on board to just have this be an ongoing thing. And then every week I will pick a textile from the Instagram site, and we may do a face-to-face interview. Of course, we'll be social distancing. I already have one scheduled with my friend Debbie. She said she has a blanket, and we're going to meet and film on the podcast about her blanket. We'll talk about it. But if we can't meet face-to-face, perhaps we can do this virtually, which is, my experience today of the virtual meeting that I had. It leaves a lot of spontaneity to occur during the meetings, which is just as fun. So I invite you to either send me an email at meadowsweetfarms@yahoo.com, or on the Instagram, and I'll put the links to all of that below. So I'm really excited about this, and I really hope that people join in, and I hope that you pass the word along so that we can really share on a global platform all the different types of textiles and all the stories of all the makers from the past. And we have so many beautiful makers in the present, but there's so many other beautiful stories that we can share as well and learn from the makers from the past. So thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from everyone. Thank you. Bye for now.
Day waiting round the bend. There's a new day, and